everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the M3 iPad Air and compare it against the M2 iPad Air and see which particular iPad is the better one for you. Now, the big thing I can definitely tell you here is that if you're going to go through and pick up some sort of an iPad, definitely getting the latest and greatest is the better option here. So going through and buying something like the M3 iPad Air would probably be the better option for a lot of people. But with that being said, the M2 iPad Air is very, very close to an M3 iPad Air in a lot of ways. And if you're going to go through and pick up an iPad, I think it would make a lot of sense to go and buy something like an M2 iPad Air as well. So the choice is yours from that standpoint, but we'll go and take a look at both these throughout this whole entire video. First things first though, if you want to pick up either one of these particular iPads, links will be down in the description below. You can get that from there and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of both these particular iPads, the biggest thing you're going to have to remember is that both of these are very, very similar when it comes down to the outside. The iPad Air, M2 model comes out in two different sizes. So it either comes out in this 11-inch model or it comes out in this, 13-inch model as well. So you do have a few different options there, which I think is really, really nice to have. It has P3 wide color gamut. It has true tone, it has anti-reflective coating. It is a really good looking device for the most part, and I genuinely would think if you're going to go through and pick up an iPad, this is a pretty solid option when it comes down to it. It also comes out in like 4 different colors. On the iPad Air M3 model, the 7th generation one, this particular iPad is going to be coming out in the exact same size. So this thing is essentially going to be giving you the same size displays, so 11-inch or 13-inch models, which I think is totally good. I like having it. You're also still going to be going through and essentially getting the same type of P3 wide color gamut, true tone, anti-reflective coating. Everything there is pretty much the same thing when it kind of comes down to it from that side as well. So you're pretty much getting the same type of experience from that side between these two iPads. You're also still getting them in the same exact sizes too, which that in and of itself, once again, is another really interesting thing kind of going on between these two devices as well. Now, on top of that, another very big thing to keep in mind here too, is that when you're taking a look at both these iPads, they both have USB Type-C ports at the bottom. So I personally love having USB Type-C. Some other of the older iPads, including some of the old iPad Airs, did have Lightning. It might seem like a dumb thing now to even mention, but that is kind of one of those big things that you're going to be experiencing here for the most part as well. On top of that, when it comes down to essentially kind of the outside as well, some of the other big things you're going to have to remember is that when it comes down to both these devices, they're both going to be giving you same styling, same kind of display for the most part, flat sides. They both support the same exact type of Apple Pencil as well. So nothing really changed there. It's basically the same type of thing, which I'm not complaining about. On top of that, when it comes down to the backside, both are giving you single camera setups. Both are giving you just the standard Apple logo on the backside. So nothing else super crazy here. It's more or less what you'd expect, which could be a good thing. But that's kind of what you're getting at on the outside of these particular iPads. So from that side, nothing super crazy, kind of what you'd expect at this point, but that's more or less what you're going to be getting inside of these types of iPads when it kind of comes down to it. Now, on top of that, when it comes down to the price tag, the M3 iPad Air right now costs about $599. So that is a pretty expensive price to pay for a device like this. Now, that's not to say that this is like a bad device or anything like that, but this is going to be a little bit more of an expensive device than you probably expect in some ways. So that might be one thing you might just want to kind of keep your eye out for, that this is going to be somewhat of like an expensive, more expensive type of iPad. Whereas on the iPad Air M2 model, that one is going to be a little bit cheaper. So you are going to be getting a little bit of a cheaper experience when it comes down to this iPad in that particular standpoint. So not the biggest deal in the world, but that will be one thing you're going to have to keep in mind within that particular device. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there too. Now, when it comes down to basically their cameras on the backside, this is going to be another very big thing to keep in mind here as well. So on the cameras, you're getting a 12 megapixel camera on the backside, and you're also getting a 12 megapixel camera on the front side as well. So when it comes down to both of these, like I said before, they're both very, very similar. So there isn't really like this big, massive difference when it comes down to these two iPads, because you're going to be getting very similar type of experience when it comes down to these two. So I will tell you from that side in and of itself, I think that is kind of a big thing to keep in mind, because you're not really going to feel like these are like very, very crazy different iPads when it comes down to it from that standpoint. So kind of keep that in mind. I think that is kind of a big deal to kind of think about. They both support center stage, which that in and of itself is such a nice thing to have. I love having center stage, and you're definitely going to be getting that type of capability when it comes down to these two iPads in and of itself. So definitely on the exterior, you're getting a really good type of layout. There's not really like that much to complain about here when it comes down to these two iPads. And I do think that is kind of in and of itself a very nice thing going on for these type of iPads when it comes down to it. So from that side in and of itself, that kind of covers it up there. Now, when it comes down to some of the other capability behind these iPads, you're getting Touch ID on both. You're getting, your landscape stereo speakers, Wi-Fi 6E. Like I said before, you're getting the same type of Apple Pencil support, and you're getting 5G support inside of these as well. So there's a lot of capability when it comes down to that. And they both support Apple Intelligence as well. So if you wanted to go and get a device that supports Apple Intelligence, you're essentially going to be getting that here inside of these types of iPads, which, like I said, that in and of itself is another very, very nice and important thing to have inside of your device when it kind of comes down to it from that side. When it comes down to their, software longevity, the iPad Air M3 model has the highest potential of outlasting something like an iPad Air M2 model. So if you are wanting the iPad that's going to be lasting for a longer period of time, then it probably is going to be something like an iPad Air M3 model. That one is going to be the one that's, like I said before, it's going to make the most amount of sense here. And I do think that is kind of an important thing to keep in mind. Because if you are wanting the iPad that's going to last longer, well, the M3 iPad Air is there, but the M2 iPad Air is still going to be supported for quite a bit of time as well, so it's not like you're going to be missing out on too much there either. And when it kind of comes down to their battery life, I would assume that the iPad Air M3 model would be better, but even then you're not getting like these big massive differences in terms of battery sizes as far as I can tell. They're both going to be relatively around the same thing too. So I wouldn't really imagine that these two are going to be giving you too many differences or too many like crazy sways when it comes down to that side either. And finally, when it comes down to their performance, as you can imagine, both these are giving you M series chipsets. The iPad Air M2 model is giving you the M2 chipset. The iPad Air M3 model is giving you the M3 chipset. And both are giving you 8 gigs of RAM. So there's really not too many, they're very, very similar. And they're both very fast performing iPads as well. So that is going to be a really big and good advantage that you're going to have between both these iPads because they're both going to be supported for so much time. They're going to be here for quite a bit of time. And I would tell you that if you're going to go through and pick up an iPad and you're trying to get the faster one, the M3 iPad is going to be on paper the faster one for the most part. But they have the same amount of cores. They have the same amount of GPUs as well. So you're not really going to be feeling like you're missing out on like an insane amount of things when it comes down to that side. But I will probably tell you once again, if you're trying to get the faster performing iPad, without a doubt, it is probably going to be something like an iPad Air M3 model. So overall, to kind of sum up this whole entire video, what I can definitely tell you is that when it comes down to these types of iPads, it probably makes the most amount of sense to go ahead and buy something like an iPad Air M3 model. If you have all the money in the world, then that one definitely would be the one that makes the most amount of sense for me to recommend to people. That one is a very good iPad. That one holds up very, very well. And like I said before, if I'm going to go through and pick up an iPad, that one is probably the one I'd recommend a majority of people to go ahead and pick up, right? That one just makes a lot of sense to go and buy. That one's a beautiful iPad. I love that iPad a lot too. So that one would probably be the most important one that I'd recommend buying in that particular situation. But with that being said, I still think there are really good iPads to go and buy for the most part as well. Like I think if you can, I would recommend still buying something like an iPad Air, M1 model. I think that one is still a very good iPad as well. You genuinely can't go too wrong with most of these, but for the most part, that's kind of how I see these iPads kind of comparing and holding up against each other. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. The like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.